Relationships, I'm sure you'll all agree, are like a roller coaster. They're full of ups and downs, but for the most part, they're very fulfilling. A major element in keeping a relationship between two people intact is trust. This is something that cannot be bought, but rather must be earned. So what do you do when you find yourself in a place where trust is gone? And how can you get it back again? To help us answer this question is life coach and relationship expert Leah C4. Always lovely to chat with you, Leah.
Always lovely to be here.
Why is it that trust becomes such an issue in relationships?
You know, we fear the ending of a relationship. We fear saying or doing something that could push our partner away. And we coming into a relationship with all of our previous relationship experience or our beliefs about relationship of what we think is appropriate or not appropriate behavior, or what we think will trigger our partner or not trigger them. And it's a big problem is that people make a lot of assumptions about how they think their partner will react if they tell them something. So people go into this hidden way of withholding information because they don't want to upset their partner. So they don't want to divulge, you know, if they're in a lot of debt. They don't want to divulge if, you know, they've behaved, you know, in a way that's inappropriate. They don't want to, you know, confront their partner about unworkable behavior because they worry the partner will just leave.
Right.
But then the behavior doesn't change, the secrecy grows, and that kind of separation and that trust starts eroding because you're not actually speaking the truth in your relationship.
So what is the impact then on trust if you are not speaking this truth and this information that you're withholding?
Well, the impact is, number one, you're always living with an element of fear. There's always a fear that underlies the way you behave in your relationship, which is totally unworkable. The second thing is you start only presenting a certain version of yourself to your partner.
Yes.
So your partner doesn't get all of who you are. Your partner doesn't get the real you. What they get is a constructed version of you that's designed to always keep the peace. That's designed to always make sure that there's no turbulence going on. So what starts to happen is that your partner stops knowing actually who you are, or you stop knowing who they are. And you know, when we're in a relationship, we want to keep meeting each other where we are both at, if that makes sense. So you know, if you're coming from a very small withheld place, that's going to be reflected in your partner.
Yes.
And they're going to come from that small withheld place as well. And then there stops being engagement and growth in the relationship. So it's a very big consequence to not be speaking your truth or bringing all of who you are, because then your relationship's not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. But now there's also seem to be two aspects to this, because one is trust that you have never really earned because you've never given your full self. But then in some relationships you might come in guns blazing and it's all you, but over time that trust starts to change. How is that impacted?
Look, the bottom line with trust breaking is broken agreements. Trust gets broken when you break agreements and you break promises. And in the beginning, it's small things, and you brush it aside because you use excuses. So you were supposed to meet your partner at 9 o'clock for dinner at that restaurant, and you arrived at 9:30. And that half an hour, your partner's been sitting there, they haven't been able to get hold of you on the phone, they don't know what's going on, they start coming up with all these scenarios. You arrive, oh, sorry, I was really late at work. It's a reasonable excuse. It makes sense to your partner. They brush it off, but they can't just quickly brush off the half an hour feeling that, you know, what was going on here. But then it happens a week later, and then it happens a week later, and it's a little thing. You forget to get the shopping like you promised. You know, you forget to organize something like you said you would. Broken agreements is one of the biggest rots I see in relationship. It erodes that cornerstone of trust, and people just constantly make excuses for broken agreements in a relationship until it's too late. And then it explodes. And then the partner goes, but you know, you never had a problem with this before.
Yes.
Well, you did. You just weren't being honest about it. You weren't being honest about the fact that you had an issue with that disrespectful behavior. Because if on that first date or that first night you had sat down and gone, okay, that for me is incredibly disrespectful, and in the future time agreements are really important for me and you need to know that about me, it would have rectified the behavior in the beginning. But people don't do that. They just let stuff go.
So now what happens if we get to that point where trust is well and truly broken? So how do you take the first step in unbundling that and building back to a space of trust?
Look, the conversation you first have is about what has gone on to lead to this point. So we've got to get clear on about what are the particular behaviors that brought us to this place. We now have to come up with an agreement of what we want the next phase of our relationship to look like.
Right.
For us to feel that we can bring trust back here, this is how we have to behave, this is how we have to speak on a daily basis. So I'm a big fan of predictable routine when you are looking at rebuilding trust in a relationship. You know what the day is going to look like, what the the week is going to look like, what the month is going to look like. And people go, but that sounds so boring. Right now, I'm not worried about boring. I'm worried about building trust again. And trust comes through, number one, keeping your agreements, and number two, consistency, and number three, transparency.
Okay.
So do what you say you'll do. When you say you'll do it every single time you say, and consistently keep those agreements. And for every relationship that's going through trust issues, that's going to take however long it takes. There's no time frame I can give you here. But transparency is really key. And I think in the world that we live in with our cell phones and our computers, and the amount of unworkable behavior that goes on secretly online with messaging and connecting, transparency has to be, and I mean transparency with no passwords on your phone. Your partner is able to see your stuff, because for a lot of modern day infidelity does happen online.
Absolutely.
So couples I've worked with want to be able to have access to that stuff. Even if the partner is clear that they're not doing anything anymore, the one who was betrayed needs validation for that, and they've got to be able to see that stuff.
Kind of confirmation.
Absolutely. So transparency is really important.
Yeah. So what if you are the person who can identify that you are causing the situation that prevents trust from existing, if that's the right way to say it? If you can identify that you've done something to break somebody's trust, whether big or small, how do you then broach that, maybe by sort of starting the conversation? Look, I think you may not trust me because of this, or I can see you don't trust me because of this. Where do you go there?
You completely own up, number one, just like that. And you have to say, I've done something or said something or behaved in a way that's not okay. This relationship's really important for me, and I want to be completely honest with you about what has gone on. And I know that it's going to be hard for me to tell you, and it's going to be hard for you to hear it. But I want to save the relationship, and I want us to have a level of honesty. So first, you completely own up to it. You describe the behavior, and then you talk about why you went that path. In a relationship, we have needs that need to be met. And when we are in a situation where our needs are consistently not being met, we will seek those needs elsewhere. Now, I'm using the example here of an affair. There are many ways that you can break trust in a relationship, but I'm using the obvious one that people can relate to.
It's the big one. I mean,
it's the big one. It is the big one. But the honesty that exists here is you can use an affair as an opportunity to really look at how to transform your relationship if you are conscious enough and willing enough to find a new way. And the affair happened because needs in the current relationship were not being met. And that's a problem from both sides. One, the partner was going unconscious, but the partner whose needs were not being met was not asking for them to be met. They weren't being open about it, going, it's been quite a while since this happened, or since we had a date, or since we did something interesting together. People don't want to ever speak the truth because they're always scared of hurting their partner's feelings.
Now, Leah, is there a point, I guess, a point of no return where the trust has been broken to the point where you're not likely to get reparation? Obviously, you need two willing parties to want to fix it. But when do you sort of put a peg in the sand and say, look, this is now, it's irreparable?
No, absolutely. There's a time when you need to take a step away if your boundaries are constantly being violated, if your needs are constantly not being met. And I always say that an apology without any change is manipulation.
Absolutely.
So if your partner just keeps apologizing, but they keep doing the same thing again, it's time to let go. And it's really an individual thing, that is, where's your level of self-respect? How far are you willing to allow yourself to be treated like this? So people make mistakes. People are human. And relationships are a journey of educating each other. And we've got to be able to create the space for that. But if you've had the big communication, the talk, and the apology has come, and a week later the exact same behavior emerges, and then again, that's now game playing, and it's time to walk away.
Okay. Now, let's talk about repair. You mentioned it's different for everybody. So what is a point of time where you maybe want to say, look, we need to bring in the big guns and speak to a professional? You know,
if you're courageous enough to sit your partner down and say, we're going through something, I'm feeling unhappy, I feel like you've broken this trust with me, your behavior is not okay, you want your partner to get on board and say, wow, I didn't know you felt like that, let's talk about this. And if partners are willing to open up that dialogue, this could literally be a single conversation that could shift it.
Okay.
But if a partner goes, well, I don't know what you're talking about, I've done nothing wrong, and I think, you're being delusional, then we've got a problem. And then the partner has to say, okay, clearly the way I'm speaking isn't landing. You're not getting me. I feel that we could do with a third party to just mediate a conversation between the two of us, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that you want to say to me that you feel you can't say to me because you're worried about my reaction. So how about we both find someone who can help us get to where we want to be in our relationship? Once you start working, I can only talk from my experience, is that, again, it is completely how willing the couples are to do the homework I give them at home. Because in a session, conversation, we can have a great conversation and come to a lot of agreement, but then you've got to go back to your house.
Yes.
And now every single day you have to do the homework. And if you're not doing it, I'll see you a week later and you'll go, oh, no, nothing has changed. And well, are you doing the work?
Yeah,
so for couples who are doing the work, literally within a week, your relationship can transform.
Well, trust, it seems, definitely is a team effort. So, Leah, thank you so much for enlightening us. And hopefully to anyone out there who is dealing with some trust issues, they can open up that conversation and get it out in the open.
Be afraid and do it anyway.
Absolutely. The best way. Dive right in. Thank you, Leah.
Pleasure.